Another warm day across the region brings with it a chance for severe storms. We'll have the latest on the risks for hail and tornadoes in the state line.
Plus, family and friends gathering to honor the memory of a Beloit man, what the city is now doing to keep his legacy alive, and the reminder to drivers about the tragedies when it comes to drunk driving.
And a state line organization uses Women's History Month to celebrate community leaders. The YWCA says their awards are all about empowering local women.
Live from WTVO 17, this is Eyewitness News at 5.
Good evening, I'm Mimi Murphy.
And I'm David Greenberg. The warm weather across the state line also bringing a chance for some severe storms
Let's head right back over to the Weather Center. Jordan, what's the forecast looking like?
Well, guys, we are seeing quite a bit of that stormy weather as we have now for the last few hours or so. But the number of warnings has gone down, at least as of recently, as we are starting to see some cooler air working in from the west. Those warnings now in place across the area. A couple of severe thunderstorm warnings across portions of Walworth County and southern Wisconsin. That's up toward the Elkhorn area, but the main focus now shifting a little bit more to the south and to the southwest for our next severe thunderstorm warning that lasts until 5:15 tonight for portions of north central Lee County and much of central Ogle County. A little bit further up to the north, those particular storms still off that direction, but again, that focus shifting more south and to the southwest. We do have some activity behind that initial line of storms, but the potential for hail going to be a bit higher with this cell near the Ogle and Lee County line. Now, if we actually pull up what we are currently seeing with hail, that's where we kind of see the probabilities that we might have a little bit higher hail in many of those locations. Pretty close to the Taylor area and just to the north of Franklin Grove across portions of Ogle County. That's where we may see hail up to around a quarter of a size, not too far to the west from Rochelle. This would be severe limits if that hail is indeed falling, but at least indicating that that is the potential for some of that hail in many of those locations. Off to the west, there were some additional warnings, but many of those were either allowed to expire or have since been canceled, leaving us now with the only severe thunderstorm warning that is closer to Rockford, being that one in Ogle and Lee County that lasts until 5:15 tonight. That active weather still for many of us, though, with the line of thunderstorms that continues to push through. But as I mentioned, a cold front starting to come in from the other side. And along that cold front with some of these cumulus towers, we can actually see just off to the area near Rochelle, off to the west of that initial cell that was pretty close to that Ogle and Lee County line. We see a lot of sunshine where that warmer weather is, but behind that, that's where we're starting to see some of those storms developing. As I mentioned, that colder air starting to work its way in, and as that does, it may eventually undercut some of these storms, lowering the potential for severe weather. But until we get that cold front that slides all the way through, we still at least hold on to the potential for a few of these storms to remain fairly strong over the next few hours. I'll let you know what to expect for the rest of the evening tonight and what we see for the rest of the week ahead, also coming up in my full forecast in just a little bit.
All right, thanks, Jordan. A Rockford man's in custody after police say they found him with a loaded handgun. On February 29th, Rockford officers were called to the area of Sablewood Drive and Sitka Lane for reports of shots fired. That's near Conklin Elementary School. At the scene, officers saw a car speeding away from the area. After a brief chase, the driver was taken into custody. Officers identified the driver as Demario Fleming. During a search, investigators say they found a loaded handgun. Fleming's facing several charges, including being an armed habitual criminal and aggravated unlawful use of a weapon. He was taken to the Winnebago County Jail.
Well, Rockford's Better Business Bureau is now spreading the word to be on the lookout for investment scams, with more than 80% of people targeted reported losing money. They say investment scams can take many forms, including trading cryptocurrencies. Experts say that people between 18 and 24 years old reported the highest median loss of $3,800. Last year, investment and cryptocurrency scams both appeared on the list of top 10 riskiest.
3 years ago, a Beloit man was killed by a drunk driver.
Chad Rates was helping a friend change a tire alongside the road. Today, family and friends are now dedicating a lasting memorial in his honor. Our Drea Baroni was there. Drea, they say it's about keeping his memory alive.
Yeah, David, Mimi, today Chad's family and the city of Beloit honored him with a memorial bench near Wootton Park in Beloit. That's where the accident that took Chad's life happened. He was only 24 years old. Chad's mom, Sandy, told me there's a lot of mixed emotions around today's unveiling.
It's definitely bittersweet. We'd much rather have our son here. But the bench is going to be a constant reminder that drunk driving destroys lives. and it's a place that people can come and enjoy and pay their respects.
I got to talk to Chad's dad and sister today, too. I'll have more on how they hope the memorial makes people think twice before getting behind the wheel. That's coming up later at 6. David, Mimi.
All right, thanks for that, Drea. Donald Trump is celebrating the Supreme Court's decision to put him back on the primary ballot in Colorado, a ruling that also affects Illinois. The justices rejected the idea that states can use anti-insurrectionist provisions of the Constitution to keep Trump off the ballot. Although they offered different reasons, the High Court's decision was unanimous. The ruling makes it clear that Congress, not states, has to set rules on how the 14th Amendment provision can be enforced.
What was being argued here would have taken the world's most successful democracy and introduced this incredibly destabilizing factor that would allow states to unilaterally remove a candidate from the ballot.
You cannot take somebody out of a race. The voters can take the person out of the race very quickly, but a court shouldn't be doing that, and the Supreme Court saw that very well.
The ruling comes a day before Super Tuesday, which is the largest primary election in the 2024 race.
The Federal Appeals Court is now considering whether Obamacare must fully cover certain types of preventative care like HIV prevention and some cancer screenings. A judge out of Texas ruling last year that some preventative care requirements in that Affordable Care Act are unconstitutional. Studies they've shown the mandate prompted an uptick in preventative services and narrowed care disparities in communities of color. If upheld, it could affect coverage and costs for up to 150 million people.
A local organization honors the work done by women throughout the state line. YWCA Northwestern Illinois held its 44th annual Leader Luncheon. The event's used to kick off Women's History Month. 6 awards were given out to female leaders in the community. The YWCA's president says it's great to see innovators across the state line rally around each other.
It's great every year when we have this to see the leadership of Rockford support this event and come out. It really is the leaders of the Rockford business community and community leaders, and it's wonderful to see them come out and support the cause of empowering women and eliminating racism.
The organization also awarded 5 scholarships to local high school seniors that demonstrate leadership and the potential to positively impact their community.
Well, drivers in the Forest City right now seeing a rise in costs at the pump. In Rockford, the average price of gas has risen by 41 cents to $3.67 a gallon. That's 65 cents higher than a month ago, 20 cents higher than a year ago. National average for gas has also been on the rise over the last week, sitting at $3.34 a gallon. Gas Buddy says the trend is hardly surprising and that prices could climb even higher as we head further into March.
Nikki Haley secures her first win on the campaign trail.
Up next, that victory coming as former President Trump is expected to get a big win at tomorrow's primaries.
Coming up at 6, a former Mr. Universe is handed down a sentence. The state's attorney says he'll spend decades behind bars.
Republican candidate Nikki Haley securing her first win over former President Trump, but more than a dozen states are scheduled to hold primaries tomorrow.
Those contests are expected to help Trump solidify his status as the Republican Party nominee. Washington, D.C. correspondent Hannah Brandt has a preview of Super Tuesday.
Super Tuesday could give former President Donald Trump a major boost in the Republican race.
We've been on a rocket to the Republican nomination. It's been a rocket.
Former Governor Nikki Haley is fresh off her first primary win in Washington, D.C. And Monday, she rallied voters in Texas, hoping to carry that momentum into Tuesday's elections.
I defeated a dozen of the fellas. I just have one more fella I gotta catch up to.
But Trump has dominated every other primary contest, and polls show he's poised to win big on Super Tuesday.
Get everyone you know to the polls so we can trounce Haley.
As he gets closer to locking up the Republican nomination, Trump is turning his attention towards his Democratic rival.
The poll numbers are very good. We're beating President Biden in almost every poll.
But Team Biden is pushing back. First Lady Jill Biden spent her weekend campaigning in swing states, telling voters that Donald Trump is dangerous.
We simply cannot let him win.
The president is also hoping for a strong show of support on Super Tuesday as his campaign tries to ramp up enthusiasm ahead of the general election in November.
There is way too much at stake.
More than a third of the total party delegates will be up for grabs on Super Tuesday. In Washington, I'm Hannah Brandt.
Another warm day in the state line brings along with it the severe weather threat.
Yeah, after the break, checking in with Jordan when we may be seeing an end to this thunder and lightning.
Now, your first warned weather forecast from meteorologist Jordan Wolf.
Here in the weather department and in the weather centers, we've been tracking some of these severe storms as they've been working their way through the state line over the last few hours. At the moment, we only have one active severe thunderstorm warning, and that is the one that is for portions of eastern Ogle County, just to the north of Rochelle, with that particular cell there. Taking a little bit of a closer look at that cell, this is what we're seeing. We're beginning to see a very compact cell, but it is starting to show at least a little bit of some hooking, and it has been growing in height, which is indicating that it is still a very healthy updraft on that storm, despite it being a little bit just ahead of the incoming cold front. The updraft having shifted a little bit since I made this cross section, but the cross section was upwards of around 30,000 feet, which is indicating that very tall updraft, showing that that is a pretty strong and healthy storm that has been developing. Hail size down a little bit from where we were earlier, but just a moment ago, hail's indicated by radar up around 1 inch in diameter, which is approximately quarter size, which is exactly what you need to have for that severe category to be reached, at least for the hail department is concerned. Off to velocity now on that same cell, we are beginning to see a little bit of an uptick in that velocity just to the north and to the northwest of the Rochelle area. This is where we have those radar returns indicating winds are either going toward the radar in one spot or away from the radar in the other. When you get those two very close to one another, that's indicating that there's just a little bit of rotation even in some of those lower levels. And that's why we're seeing that kind of hook beginning to develop on that. In that same location where that rotation was developing, that's where we're beginning to see a little bit of a hook indicating there on at least that particular area of the storm when we look with satellite and with radar. When we zoom out a little bit more, this is kind of the line of storms that we've had working its way through the area as we see some of those heavier storms with lots of lightning up off to the north and to the northeast. But locally, the only thing that a little bit more of a concern to us right now is the one that is just to the north of the Rochelle area. It is still capable of producing 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts as well as some hail, and that goes until 5:45 p.m. for that particular warning. All the other warnings that were fairly recently were allowed to expire not that long ago. These storms are developing along a cold front that has been working its way into the region. Ahead of that cold front, Rockford was sitting at 73 degrees just a little while ago and has already dropped to 62 with the passage of that cold front. Ahead of that front, again, temperatures in the 70s. Behind it, we're down in the 40s and even into the 50s in some spots. So that is the colder air that's going to eventually stabilize the atmosphere, pulling an end to some of these severe storms. Ahead of that, though, we still have at least a chance for some of those scattered storms to remain in place. But I think any of this activity that comes in later towards 8, 9, 10 o'clock will be on the colder side of that cold front, likely indicating that that is going to be more of a heavy rain potential as opposed to the severe wind and or hail potential. All of this does look to clear out once we get to around 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and our SkyTrack camera overlooking Rockford showing off a little bit more of a cloudy picture, but no active severe weather, at least ongoing in that particular location. That front that I mentioned earlier also really showing off when we look with a wider range. Ahead of that front, very strong southerly winds. Behind that, northerly winds, dropping those temperatures as we get later on into the 20s. We are going to see a little bit of a quieter pattern for the weather once we get beyond today and going into the rest of the weekend, but we do have a couple small chances for some rain as well once we get into Thursday as well as into Friday with our next weather system lifting north. We do see those temperatures, though, that will be in the 50s, still well above average, guys, for the rest of the week ahead, only very briefly dropping close to normal once we get later on into the weekend before back in the 50s early next week.
All right, Jordan, thanks. Much different looking 7-day than we saw last week.
Absolutely. Scott's next with sports. He'll tell us about 2 local basketball teams that will be trying to make school history tonight.
And the State Line's premier high school all-star basketball game. Lineups are set.
Now sports with Sports Director Scott Lever.
Tonight could very well be the biggest night in boys basketball history for two of our local teams, Pecatonica and Byron. Both are trying to lock up their first trips to the state tournament. Pecatonica is playing at NIU in a Class 1A Super Sectional. Pecatonica has never advanced to the state tournament. In fact, this is the first time Peck has ever competed in a Super Sectional. The Indians are playing Aurora Christian, the winner of the Harvest Christian Sectional last week. Now, Byron will take the court tonight in Sterling in a Class 2A Super Sectional. This is only the second time that a Byron boys team has ever played in a Super Sectional. The last time was in 2007. That team lost and did not make it to state. So the Tigers can make school history with a win tonight against Chicago Latin. Rockford's annual high school basketball all-star games are set. The Rising Stars Classic, the boys and girls doubleheader involving seniors, will be held at Rock Valley College as usual on Saturday, April 13th. Some members of the media gathered today to select the teams. Leading the girls' Nick 10 Stars will be Boylan's Lilia Esparza, Hononegah's Jordan Johnston, and Freeport's Jelaya Young. Leading the area girls' Stars team will be Orangeville's Whitney Sullivan, Sycamore's Lexi Carlson, and Lee Wynn's Grace Grosinger. The boys' Nick 10 Stars will be led by Auburn's Joaquin Cheney, Jefferson's Randy Johnson, the Browns' Adam and Braden from Belvedere North, and 3 players from Nick 10 champion Guilford. And the boys' area stars include Byron's Ryan Tucker and Lutheran's Vontez Dent. You can find a complete list of all the stars who have been selected, plus more information on the games now at mystateline.com. The Bulls will play out west tonight in Sacramento against the Kings. It's a 9 p.m. start. The Blackhawks will also see action out in Colorado against the Avalanche. The Blackhawks have lost the last 6 games. Well, the big NFL news is Eagles center Jason Kelce has officially announced his retirement. He ends a 13-year NFL career that saw him appear in 7 Pro Bowls. He'll likely wind up in the Hall of Fame one day. And don't be surprised if Kelce lands a job with one of the TV networks doing color commentary of NFL games. That's sports. We'll be right back.
First Warn Interactive Radar from Rockford Auto Glass and More shows a few of the storms moving through the area. The only severe storm at the moment is the one that is in portions of Ogle County right now that goes until 5:45 p.m. Quieter conditions expected for the early part of the week. Next rain chances toward the end of the week.
All right, thanks, Jordan.
Have a great rest of your evening. We'll see you at 6.